You're lying on the ground 200,000 years ago, and the fire beside you is dying down to embers. Out past the light, something moves through the grass. You can hear it. You can't see it. Your eyes are closed, and for the next several hours, you'll be blind, deaf to context, and unable to defend yourself if anything gets close. Your muscles go slack whether you want them to or not, and still, your body pulls you under. Right now, you sleep behind a locked door, maybe a camera, maybe an app that pings you if glass breaks. 8 hours of total vulnerability, and you barely think about it. None of that machinery existed for most of human history, and yet people still closed their eyes every single night and woke up. So how did humans survive the single most dangerous stretch of every day? Total physical shutdown, night after night, for 200,000 years, without a single lock. Start with the brain itself. In 2016, sleep researcher Yuka Sasaki and her team at Brown University put volunteers through 2 consecutive nights in a lab, scanning their brains the whole time. On the first night, one hemisphere stayed measurably more alert than the other, quicker to react, slower to drop into deep sleep. By the second night, in a now familiar room, the asymmetry was gone. They called it the first night effect. And it isn't anxiety, it's a leftover guard system. Half your brain running a night watch, in unfamiliar ground, not unlike a bird sleeping with one eye open near a predator, or a dolphin that never fully shuts down both hemispheres at once, because it still has to surface to breathe. Different problem, same solution. Never let the whole system go dark simultaneously. You've felt this without a name for it. The hotel room where you never quite sleep, the couch where every creak wakes you. That's not a flaw. That's roughly 200,000 years of nights spent somewhere that wasn't guaranteed safe. So the brain adapted on its own. But a half-alert hemisphere doesn't stop a leopard. Something else had to. In 2012, archaeologist Francesco Berna and colleagues published evidence from Wonderwork Cave in South Africa's Northern Cape of controlled fire use roughly 1 million years old, the oldest solid proof of hominins keeping flame burning inside a shelter. The ash and burned bone sat more than 100 meters back from the entrance, deep enough into the hillside that wind could never have carried in a wildfire by accident. Somebody built it and kept building it, that far inside the dark. Big cats in particular tend to avoid flame. It wrecks the low-light vision that makes them dangerous after dark. Everyone assumes fire's main job back then was warmth and cooking. The security function may have mattered just as much, maybe more. A fire that never went out meant a group that never had to fully close its eyes to the dark outside the circle. Keeping a fire like that fed all night takes somebody awake to do it. Sitting up, watching it, stopping it from dying at 3 in the morning. At Kesem Cave, near what's now Tel Aviv, archaeologists Ran Barkai and Avi Gopher have spent 2 decades excavating a hearth reused across roughly 200,000 years of occupation, beginning around 400,000 years ago. Bones and stone tools cluster in a tight ring around it, not scattered, but arranged the way people sit when they mean to face inward, together, toward the light. That arrangement is its own security system. A circle facing the fire is also a circle facing outward, in every direction at once. No one sleeper has to watch 4 directions alone. The group just splits the dark between them by how they lie down. Cut marks on the animal bones around that same hearth suggest people were butchering and eating together there too, not alone in some corner. Which means the fire wasn't just a light source, it was where the group actually became a group, every evening, before anyone lay down. It's the same logic behind something every camper still does, without thinking about it. Nobody sleeps at the edge of the fire, facing away from everyone else. Here's where it gets stranger. The watching didn't stop once everyone closed their eyes. Historian A. Roger Eckerch, working out of Virginia Tech, spent years combing diaries, court records, and medical texts from pre-industrial Britain and Europe, publishing the pattern in 2001. Sleep back then usually came in 2 segments. A first sleep, a waking period of roughly an hour, then a second sleep. People used that middle hour to tend the fire, check on children, listen to the house in the dark outside it, and pray or talk quietly before lying back down. Nobody scheduled that hour. Bodies did it on their own, splitting one long night into 2 shorter watches instead of a single unbroken blackout. Looked at from a distance, it resembles insomnia. Functionally, it worked like a perimeter check nobody had to consciously assign. Electric light erased that pattern within a couple of generations. But none of this proves anyone actually felt safe doing it. Only that they survived it, night after night. In 2015, sleep researcher Jerome Siegel at UCLA led a study published in Current Biology, monitoring 3 modern groups who still sleep without walls, locks, or electric light: the Hadza of Tanzania, the San of Namibia, and the Tizime of Bolivia. The surprising finding wasn't fear. It was how unremarkable their sleep looked. 6.5 to 7 hours a night on average, falling asleep a few hours after dark. Almost no insomnia reported in any group. Sleep onset tracked falling temperature far more reliably than it tracked darkness. Everyone assumes people without walls sleep light and terrified, jolting awake at every snapped twig. The data says otherwise. They slept about as soundly as anyone behind a deadbolt, because the safety was never in a door. It was already built every night out of fire, company, and taking turns. So which of those was the real answer? None of them. Alone. A brain that keeps half a hemisphere on watch is useless without a fire to watch for. A fire is useless without a group arranged to face outward and split the dark between them. And even a full circle around a hearth still needed someone conscious enough, on and off through the night, to notice if anything changed, which is exactly what that first sleep, second sleep, waking hour was quietly doing, generation after generation without anyone ever naming it a system. The Hadza aren't calm today because nothing dangerous is out there. Leopards and hyenas are very much out there. They're calm because the real technology was never a structure. It was rotation, someone in every camp on any given night, staying a little less asleep than everyone else, and that person changing by morning. Safety wasn't a wall. It was a schedule nobody had to write down to agree on. Picture that fire again, the one from the very start, burning low while you sleep beside it. You were never actually alone in that dark. Someone near you was awake, or about to be, watching the same tree line you'd stopped watching the moment your eyes closed. Nobody had to ask them to. It was just their turn. Somewhere along the way, humans traded that arrangement for a lock and a door